Psalm chapter 90, if you have a Bible, and track along with me. Let's see, there are 17 verses in this psalm, and let's read it. Let's just read it for now and kind of lay the foundation. I'll give you a little bit of the background, as much as we can know, and we'll probably leave it there and think about it as we dive into it the coming days. I really think this psalm will encourage you, especially for such a time as this. This is a good psalm to be engaging with during a season of unpredictability, where we feel that there are things in motion around us and in our nation that we don't fully understand, and we don't totally understand where it's all going. We trust God's providence and sovereignty. We rest in knowing we're in His care. We want to embrace His will and His work. And this is a really good psalm for all these things. So the psalm is titled, A Prayer of Moses, the Man of God. So we'll come back to that. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Verse 1, Lord, Thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever Thou hadst formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, Thou art God. Thou turnest man to destruction, and sayest, Return, ye children of men. For 1,000 years in Thy sight are but as yesterday when it is past, and as a watch in the night. Thou carriest them away as with a flood. They are as asleep. In the morning they are like grass which groweth up. In the morning it flourisheth and groweth up. In the evening it is cut down and withereth. For we are consumed by Thine anger, and by Thy wrath are we troubled. Thou hast set our iniquities before Thee, our secret sins in the light of Thy countenance. For all our days are passed away in Thy wrath. We spend our years as a tale that is told. The days of our years are 80 years and 10, and if by reason of strength they be 80 years, yet it is their strength, labor, and sorrow. For it is soon cut off, and we fly away. I think I added a word. Yet is their strength, labor, and sorrow. For it is soon cut off, and we fly away. For who knoweth the power of Thine anger? Even according to Thy fear, so is Thy wrath. So, teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Return, O Lord, how long? And let it repent Thee concerning Thy servants. O satisfy us early with Thy mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad, according to the days wherein Thou hast afflicted us, and the years wherein we have seen evil. Let Thy work appear unto Thy servants, and Thy glory unto their children. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish Thou the work of our hands upon us. Yea, the work of our hands, establish Thou it. A good portion of this psalm feels pretty heavy and pretty negative, but we'll see as we work through it, it's really not, it sets up with a negative, but it resolves the negative in a wonderful way. I mean, a big way. And so it's a true psalm. It's a reality check. It's a reality reminder. It takes us to the heavy side, the heavy perspective of reality, but then lightens it with God's antidote, God's solution, God's resolution to the heaviness. So I don't want to get into all that or get into the weeds yet, because it's really beautiful, and the road ahead of us in the coming days is really going to be wonderful. This is a psalm I want to encourage you to meditate on with me over the coming week or two, and read it and meditate on it and think it through and think about Moses, think about Moses' life. So let's talk about this opening line, a prayer of Moses, the man of God. So Moses was the chosen leader of the nation of Israel that was used by God to deliver the people out of Egypt, across the Red Sea, miraculous deliverance into the promised land. They made it to the borders of into the wilderness, and then they made it to the borders of the promised land. and the people rebelled against God, disobeyed. Remember the 12 men that went to spy, and Joshua and Caleb came back and said, let's go, God's got this. But 10 other men said, no, we can't. They're too great for us. So the nation disobeyed God and condemned that generation to wandering the wilderness for 40 years. And along that road, Moses made some bad decisions, and God rebuked him and said, you're not even going to be able to now go into the promised land. You'll see it, but you won't enter into it. So Moses is the man that wrote the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. We call that the Pentateuch. And it would have been written most likely during that wandering period of time in the wilderness. And it would have been used by Moses. The initial purpose of those 5 books would have been Moses teaching the nation of Israel Genesis, their history, and really the history of all things, where the whole world came from, and all of the events that led up to where they were at that point. And then, of course, Exodus, telling the story of their departure. And then Leviticus, God's roadmap of their civil order, their worship, their ceremonial cleansing, how they would interface, how they would relate to him and with him, the sacrificial system, the offices of the priesthood, and then Numbers, more narrative, more organizing of the people, the new nation, the young nation. Deuteronomy, the old generation had passed away. The kids that grew up in the wilderness, about to go into the promised land, crossing Jordan. Deuteronomy is Moses reteaching them all of the things he had taught to their parents, and then challenging them to go forward into the promised land, holding on to these things. So these are the books Moses wrote to teach the next generation, to pass on the faith. So much there to talk about handing off our faith to the next generation. But the psalm is the only psalm that's attributed to Moses. By all accounts, by any record that we would have, this would be the first psalm ever written. And maybe there was more writings of Moses, maybe there was more poetry, maybe there were more songs that we don't have record of. But this one God has preserved for us. I am so tired right now. I'm sorry, I'm going to probably make you yawn. This one God's preserved for us and has recorded for us. And so it is Moses most likely at the end of his life, toward the end of his life. They've probably come to the borders of the promised land. And Moses is probably contemplating the generation that's passed away. And this psalm lifts us really high. I want you to think of a satellite image view of Earth. Think of these sweeping videos of satellites that greatly reduce the continents, the oceans, and think about that as opposed to a ground level view. So ground level is your day today, all right? And what this psalm does is it lifts you up to a satellite view of life and your lifespan and our existence on earth. And what is the nature of our existence on earth? What are we born into on this planet? What's all around us? It gives us a framework of interpreting reality. And then it gives us God's cure for the brokenness of our reality, the brevity of our lives, and the hopelessness of this short thing we call our lifespan. And that's why this is a very significant psalm. It's ancient. It goes way back. It would have been a teaching tool for the earliest believers in God to understand who they are, who he is, and how do they live their lives following him. So I'm going to leave it there for today. That's enough for today. We've read Psalm 90. We've laid the foundation, and we'll let it teach us the next week or two. And I thank you for joining me today.